Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, scientists who are here.
I tell you.
The reason why I thought this session was important was for us to practice and what we know about the practice and move into scientists and interrogating maybe the practice or the others, so we become a bit more academic, looking at the abstracts that we received for NIDEC 2020. So I'm hoping through this session, each of you has your abstract with you and will follow through so that towards the end we can have a one-on-one with the questions that you might have. So the presentation is really general in nature and gets a little bit deeper towards the end, but you must enjoy it. So feel free to stop me if I'm going too fast. Feel free to interject so that we can be on the same page and we can move with the same speed. And if necessary, we can even stop in the middle and proceed another day, if that is what we wish for. Again, as you can see there, I'm starting from the African environment because we enter into the scientific space as Africans or as Kenyans. So I always start from who you are or who we are. And of course, I'm also part of you because I've also put in my abstract in there. So the African in you or the culture in you is so automatic to you when you start to write or to think. It should be. So whatever you read about, whatever you write about, the perspective that you take should be from, I am assuming, from an African environment in which you have been brought up or in which we live as Africans. So check again that you have maybe an African environment or part of yourself within the story that you want to say or within the study that you want to undertake. So what is my African landscape? And many of you might have seen this slide. I always start from here because my African landscape might be slightly different from yours. It might be totally different from somebody in Europe. Actually, when I showed this at Loughborough in the UK, it was totally different to them. And many of the things didn't make sense to them in that literal sense. But when I look at where I'm sitting or what I do, then I look at like the seats. I did my PhD on the sofas in Gikomba. And so I live by looking at seats. If you looked at my Facebook yesterday, I was looking at some Swahili chairs. And what intrigues me is that I saw a similar chair in New York at the MoMA Gallery. So now I am intrigued. I am excited. I want to write about it because what I've seen locally has something similar or a relationship with what I saw in MoMA. But I also looked at the technology that is used at this with the small enterprises. I looked at how they modify their products. Further on, we looked at Mapungubwe in South Africa. And it intrigues me because Mapungubwe is a whole story. Recently, they won an award, not so recently, about 6 years ago, their cultural center. So they have things to do with history of Africa and also what we call natural materials through the Mapungubwe Center. So there is something there which I think if I put in my Kenyan context, there might be something there. When you look at the Adinkra symbols and a lot of us, I see a lot of Africans looking at Adinkra symbols. What is important is the symbolism or iconography that comes out of it. And in the Kenyan context, which is where you and I come from, there are things that are iconic. There are things that are symbolic. There are persons that are symbolic. There are persons that are iconic. So maybe that's what it intrigues me from that context. But then we have people like Magdalene Odundo, who are also, it's coming back to us to haunt us as scientists, because like, for those of you who are in the UON, you know that we have been looking at clay and trying to understand clay. And this has been done by Kina Magdalene Odundo to international levels. So we are beginning, Magdalene talks about her pottery as vessels. And these vessels, she even puts 6 of them and says, these are now old men, elders. So you cannot buy one, you cannot separate them because they work, the 6 of them together. They are elders talking. There's a pregnant woman, within the vessel or the pot, you can even see a belly button. So I have seen master's theses done on Magdalene Odundo's work, and Magdalene is from Kakamega, Ingoho. Yani, you can write about Kakamega today and the Kakamega that Magdalene looked at so many years ago, or that she left behind. What has been the difference? The Simpsons, the cartoon Simpsons, were back in Kakamega a couple of years ago. If you're from Kakamega, tell us what the Simpsons could have done, flying all the way from USA to go to Kakamega. What were they doing there? And did they see what you are seeing also? There's, oh, Malangatana. Let me not tell you about Malangatana because I'm going to write the book about Malangatana. You know, I met the guy before he died, and every designer I meet, I tell them about Malangatana. You can Google him. But the matatus, which is now a tourist attraction, people come from US and UK to come and board matatus, the Rongai matatus. Machangwe culture, what is it? What? There's a culture, it is a culture. Mungwano, I don't know, something. But matatus have become a global phenomenon, attracting tourists and also putting color within our landscape. When I first wrote a paper for South African Design magazine, it was about the form and content of matatus in Nairobi, what it means for Kenyans. What do matatus mean for Kenyans? Tinga Tinga, I don't have to tell you about because you know more than me. I look at some of the welders. When we visited, what is it called? Some home furniture shop on near City Stadium. They told us that his biggest most precious thing in his workshop are the jigs that he has. And anything can burn, but he puts so much value on his jigs because the jigs contain the designs that he makes and also the standardization. It's very important to his production. But that cartoon, which next to it is Bongo Man, is from South Africa, where they're looking at a student did a master's in design, and they're looking at the visual imagery used within the media in South Africa. And of course, then I compare it with my Bongo Man. I miss Bongo Man. I don't even read it, but I need to see that the bearded Rastaman is there, even if I don't read the details. But I live by my Kaloli. And of course, then there's Pato Mukabi. Mukabi is an artist of international whatever. He's a local, he's from Kakamega. We can talk, we can write masters, we can write PhD theses, we can write papers on artists from Kenya and from Nairobi, and Patrick Mukabi cannot miss as an indigenous African, locally trained. I actually taught him at the Poly many years ago. So I can talk about Patrick Mukabi. That is my African landscape. So when I talk about sustainability, when I talk about appropriate technology, if I was to talk about co-design, if I was to talk about product development, if I was to talk about new product development, it would be within the context of what I do and where I live. My question therefore to you is, what about you? What about you? Are you present in what you talk about? Are you passionate about what you talk about? or it's the theory that I tell you that now today we are going to do sustainability. Tarararam, taram. Okay, so that's my Africa. I'm assuming everybody has an Africa, has a Kenya, has a culture, has a language, has something that they are passionate about. That passion is what will leverage you into an arena where somebody says, tell us about these sofas. Aye, tell us about Kina Patrick. That is what will attract people to what you write about. So I'm assuming that you always have an audience to which you want to attach your story. The person whom you want to read and understand your story and definitely agree with you. So you must understand that from where you're coming from. Mike, you need to admit Alex. I can see him sending a message there. Please admit him in. So when we look at the small enterprise sector, and I put these leather guys because they're struggling so hard and they're not designers. And the nice thing about it is many times designers give up and say, Bata is already doing shoes, I'll never be able to make shoes. Oh, so-and-so is already doing it, so I'll not be able to do it. You create your space within which you do what you're passionate about, in which you make your design statements. So these are from Nyahururu, when we visited Nyahururu, and they are telling us how they produce these things, and they do a good job. Actually, that's another paper which I want to write, but I'm so passionate about it, that's why I put it here. Because I even tried the shoes they had, they didn't have my size, but they're making good shoes, and they know that Bata exists. There are about 4 Bata shoes shops around them, but they're still making their own little contribution into the economy. Designers need to make contributions into the bigger economy. That means understanding the economic situation in which we find ourselves. Let me pause there. Mike, Chess, can somebody admit? Let me admit him, okay. So on this call, you see a lot of sewing machines, because today, as we are talking, this is where the government is seeking design intervention. When we are looking at the PPEs, I hope you understand what I talk about when I talk about PPEs. The government is saying, designers, step up, produce for us PPEs for our medical, because that is in response to our pandemic, no, not ours, the global, and that's what you need to do. The government has gone ahead and made policies to attract more design activity in that area. The government has given rebates and wants to know, what else do you want for us to produce PPE so that designers can also assist in the mitigating against the global pandemic. If you read Magoha's speech, he was talking about how many million masks to be produced for schools to open. The University of Nairobi alone, with 50,000 students, if we were to produce 2 masks per student, that's talking about 100,000. What products are you producing which is attracting the national attention? Or what are you writing about that is going to give us national attention? Designers. I'm asking you as I'm asking myself. So again here, this is my friend Olbene Maureen and her husband. She's a very innovative designer. She's not a trained designer, but she takes every opportunity to learn about design. And you can see she's adapted the Maasai shuka into bags, into tourist things that people can buy. The important thing is that when you tell a designer like you and me, except for Nkatha Kiruki, they won't want to deal with the shuka. They don't want to know. And yet, Louis Vuitton is interested in the shuka. Even his photographer was a chief guest in an international forum in UK talking about the Maasai shuka. You and I don't want to know about this shuka, but everybody else wants the shuka. So I'm only seeing Kata in that operating there. But if you read about the Kenya national dress, and I quote Joy Mboya said that had they at that time considered the Maasai shuka as a possible fabric, the Kenya national dress might have been more successful. Do you have a position on the national dress? And can you share that position so that it's academic, so that we can interrogate it? Designers. Okay, so a lot of us, there's been a lot of products for the less able or the disabled. And here I, after a brief stint with the APDK and with some research from Julia, who was at Bombolulu, and some intervention from Coletta, who was looking at the JK Foundation or something, we find that the disabled persons need a lot of products. After the Musongari accident, many of the girls were taken to, was that 2011 or something? Many of the girls were taken to Europe because locally there was no products for the disabled. So a lot of these products are being imported. If you look at the wheelchairs, only APDK can produce the wheelchairs. They produce them in two sizes, a big one and a small one. If you can't fit in any of those, shauri yako. The ones they produce locally cannot last beyond 1 year because of the rough terrain that we have around the people who use these products. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to look at what products do the less abled people need. If you look at the child on my extreme right, he's sitting on a cardboard made chair. And the cardboard made chair, it just takes 3 weeks for a designer to improve that chair. I'm sure the designers here will agree with me. It just takes 3 weeks for us to have a prototype which is much improved from what it is, even within the budget that these people have. Where are designers operating, you and I? Where are you operating? So Jamhuri, where I like this because he's my friend, Kimathi. Kimathi is talking of the Buyu safari duffel bags, which is making with the Kitui women. So these duffel bags, which are being sold from US, I think, New York, his selling point is that they are unique and they also support the livelihood of women in Kitui, which is true because he also has his testimonials on his website. And then the duffel bags, he says, none of them are the same. If you take any of these three, none of them are the same. So when I have mine, it will never look like yours. That's his selling point. One, that he's supporting the livelihood of the women, and two, that it is an individual bag. It is for you yourself. It is not shared because the patterns on them are each different, made by different women. Jamhuri is looking at some research into shoes. I hope the shoes are clear. And he's using the same patterns from the bags to now make these shoes, and they really look lovely. When I see him next, and when you meet him, please tell him I'm waiting for a pair for my support. But Mary Collins, who is making paintings like Mukabi, is now using the same paintings, and Woodcham is making punishing fabric from the paintings and selling them for a very dear price. You can check out their prices at the junction. Mary Collins herself, she said, when I visited last, one of her paintings was selling for 450,000 shillings. And she was telling me it doesn't make enough money. One painting was selling for 450,000 and she sells only online now. And she was saying she doesn't make enough money for painting. How much are your paintings selling for? The Maasai factor in design, again, this is wood charm, who have taken the Maasai neck piece and made it into these products, and they're selling them very dearly. Wood charm, some of their products, you can find them on Kijabe Street, and some of their products you'll see even in State House. But when I was last in Maputo, Mozambique, many years ago, many years, I think it was in 2002 and 2000, one of my assignments was to put Pucci on the products from the informal sector. And once we did that, they would be exported to New York City for their New York gift fair. So we were downloading Pucci and putting it onto bangles, miniature animals, you know, like they have the kissy soaps on the animals and the love hearts. So we are putting them on those informal sector products for the New York gift fair. That is a whole research in itself, how the process and if they're making money and what kind of money and etc. But that the designer was operating, me as a designer was operating in that space. And of course, we did a lot of jigs. You heard earlier how this guy in the city stadium, Homemark, I think he's even got an outlet in Buruburu. Homemark puts a lot of value on his jigs for standardization, but also for storing the designs, for storage for the design, making the templates, what in Kikomba they call the kingi and the queen, so that the designs are replicable. It's a very manual replicating process, but it works for the informal sector. Let me pause there, and the questions, I hope the questions are coming in. Any burning question before I proceed? Any comment? I go on? Fine. So now, we turn from design doers, into design researchers, people who want to write and talk about design. And I've put this is what I shared with design scientist in Chiambogo University, Uganda, a couple of weeks ago. Last year, I think, when I was around June, when I was in Chiambogo, we're looking at what type of design research should we be doing. And that they're put into 4 categories. Descriptive studies, so we describe, like a lot of the things I've shown you earlier was descriptions. It could be prescriptive, how to make something better, philosophical, or it could be design education. So there are about 8 you can break it down into 8 sub, but I've clustered them into 4 for ease of this presentation, or for that presentation at that time. In descriptive research, we are asking the question, what is design? How do people design? Earlier in my presentation, I was talking about how do people design. That's a descriptive study. If we leave a descriptive study of how do people design, then we can do a prescriptive research. How to support designers. Designers are doing this badly, they should be doing this. Informal sector are doing this badly, they should be doing this. So we do a research in order to prescribe. And action research can be prescriptive, because you're not only writing, but you're also doing at the same time. An action research can be a prescriptive research. And as I have written there, it focuses on application strategies, methods, techniques, tools to use for designing with a view to improving, just like a doctor prescribes. So even you, as an expert, taking a position of an expert, you can prescribe at the end of your research or as part of the process. You can do a philosophical study. This is PhD. This is PhD, but anybody can undertake a philosophical study, looking at the foundational problems, epistemological problems, methodological problems, ethical problems. PhD, masters, you can operate in this area of philosophical studies, because you are proposing philosophies, you are testing philosophies, you are looking at emerging philosophies, whether they be in education, whether they be in practice, whether they be in any of the 4 areas of research. You can undertake a philosophical study at PhD, master's, scientific level, to say maybe. So the philosophical then studies can ask general, what is design, characteristics of valid theories. You can question a theory for you to now, you question a theory for you to now cancel it out and come with a better one. Theoretical design, concepts, or strategies. Master's, PhD, you are operating in that level. But you can also look at design education, focusing on various models of design education. There is now, presently we have got the TVETA, which has come up very aggressively or very prominently. And then we have the formal, the formal strata. So you can compare and contrast outcomes, problems, issues, anything. But you start from critiquing what TVETA is proposing, or NITA, and what is the formal system we have, with a view to questioning or proposing improvements or highlighting the issues of its implementation. Those are the 4 areas that probably design education would then come in. You can also compare developing countries and the more developed countries. You can compare Africa, South Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, and the North. You can compare design education within those parameters. When we look at those design researches, they can be purposive. I've talked about the four of them. They can be purposive, they can be inquisitive, they can be informed, they can be methodical, they can be communicable. Let me, I don't want to go too deep into this, but let me say that what has been, the Design Research Society sort of almost agrees that all design is based on communication. It's about communication. I'm not too sure about the truth of it, but now at PhD or master's, you can also question that. If all design is about communication. So now, if the philosophy is that all design is communication, at PhD masters, you can question that belief or the in-belief, or you can question that. But even when you are a designer, and most of us here are designers because we paint, we fashion, we do what, but you have to be a researcher when you are now writing. You are now a researcher. And you can Google what it means to be a researcher. In the words of Professor Siaga, for those of you who've been in ADD, a research means researching. Researching. Methodologically, scientifically, in a replicable manner. There must be variables. A variable, let me indulge in this a little bit. A variable is measurable and it has features. An independent variable, now look at your titles. An independent variable is used, you input things into it to get a dependent variable. A dependent variable is an output variable. It's a result. Let me give you a simple example. If I give you money, you're going to grow your business. Money is an independent variable. Growth is the dependent variable. There is a correlation between money and growth. And for a young researcher, you might want to keep the independent variables to 1 or 2. Not 5, you can't. There are too many things that will happen in between. So you can say that the government policies and their impact on the fashion industry. So the government policies are the independent variables that you're looking at, and the impact is the dependent variable. The reason why I put this designer as a researcher is this is where also the wicked problems of design come in. Because the designer as a researcher, you must take a position, or if you're designing, you stop and say, this is where it stops. So the outcome or the result is subjective. It depends on the designer. So when we talk of the wicked problems of design, it is because design research is by nature subjective. And when the designer is the researcher, they decide, when they're doing the experiment, they decide that this is the ultimate. If I'm designing for you this room, it must be blue and yellow and green because this is what will give you the ambience. When you put that room and you put a Japanese inside, the Japanese will be so shocked, they'll be traumatized. But the solution that you produced was the ultimate. So the wicked problems of design must be looked at within the context of the designer and the environment in which that designer is operating. When you're collecting data in an experiment, you'll say that's enough to prove this within this context. Let me also say here that they're saying that most or all design research is qualitative. It's not quantitative. So again, this is a philosophical statement which can be probed within a philosophical research, that all design research is qualitative. That is from the Design Research Society. And of course, unless therefore you add in your methodology, unless you check your validity and reliability of your instruments of investigating the wickedness or the subjectivity of design research, then it becomes nothing. So design research, even if it is subjective, even if it is qualitative, the methodology must be foolproof. That is the science of design. The science of design lies in the methodology that you use, which proves or which allows us to replicate the processes so that we can come up with either the same results or a different result, but the methodology is scientific. So design is not, this is nice. It must be methodological when you are doing design as a researcher. design process. I want to pass that.
Terry, have we lost you?
Oh.
Daktari, have we lost you?
I am Sasuki.
Oh, sorry, Prof. I keep forgetting. My bad. Forgive me. Forgive me. I keep
okay.
being told and I keep forgetting.
It's okay.
So I think allow Julia to take the floor and just field questions, and then we can field them between you and herself as we wait for Dr. Lilac to come back.
Okay.
I am here.
Actually, Dr. Lilac is back. Yes.
Okay.
Good.
Not only am I here, I'd actually finished. I was just telling the designers to be a bit more receptive to criticism. Thank you.
Can I say not criticism, critique?
Thank you. You see, take critiques positively. Do not wait for a halo effect where everybody's clapping when you're doing something. Also, listen to those who are walking away without looking at you. I'm done.
Thank you, Dr. Lilac. I think now we can take questions. Anyone with a burning question or reactions to the presentation that was just done by Daktari?
Yes, Esther Kute here. Can I go?
Yes, go ahead, Esther.
Okay, so Dr. Lilac mentioned something. Thank you so much for that presentation, by the way. Thank you. I think as a designer, taking diving into the deep end of research is a bit scary, but it's something that, that I want to do. So this feels like a perfect timing, at least for me. So you mentioned something about a research and how it's supposed to be methodological. And someone asked a question that I wanted to ask, maybe to all participants, I don't know. What's the difference between a search and a research? And is it important to know the differences, or is it not? Hello?
No,
Sorry,
so
I was asking the question between a research and
a search, like searching.
a search.
Yes, you know the normal search?
Yes.
Yes, so what's the difference? And is it important to be able to know the differences when you're doing research or no?
Let me say that research by nature is a process. You must have a reason. As such, you don't need a reason. But when you're undertaking research, it is purpose, it is purposive, it is in what are those things that I wrote earlier?
It's inquisitive, informed, methodological, communicable.
Those ones. Yeah. But as such can be informal. And it doesn't have to have intent. But contribute.
I was just going to say a search can be in a research. It could be one of the ways that you can find information for the research.
Okay.
And you will need to search sort of state-of-the-art information if you're going to support your research and have a background and contextualize what you're doing. So that's when you do a search to find the information you need to back you up, and to also define how what you're doing is actually different or basically different from what has been already existing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
Okay,
you,
thank you.
Dr. Thank you, Prof.
Let me say also this about research and research. I normally tell my postgrads, don't go into a research before a search. You must have a gut feeling that the research is researchable. And the only way to strengthen your intuition or your gut feeling is to do a search. And then you can start from observation or from some literature I've read. Like I'm talking about some things that I have talked about because I have read them, not as research, but maybe as searches.
So is this similar to what we say, like a preliminary kind of, I don't know, study?
Not necessarily, because a search can have everything and anything. Preliminary is now we're heading towards the research. It has attention.
But I will also say, looking at the African context, you may not have we haven't had as much information documented in terms of some of the areas we're looking at. So your search may actually be grounded, looking, observing, identifying something that you suspect. And so you can actually search through observation and say, look, I'm looking, and it could be part of that pre-testing. And sometimes you can start that way, and then you can go and look for, search for things in terms of the books to see if you can make a comparison, and then you can actually get to decide your hypothesis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Prof. Thank you, Dr. Any other question? Somebody else with a question?
I have a question. So
go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Melissa here. Thank you so much, Dr. Lilac, for that great presentation. My question here, Wanyama. Okay. So my question revolves around, do you want to go first, Wanyama?
I think Melissa go first and then Wanyama will be next, yes. Thanks.
So it's more like, how can design research accommodate the studio-based investigation carried out by artists and other creatives who oftentimes consider the studio practice as actual research process? And the ways of working tend to be quite subjective, especially because the inquiry is of an artistic process where the knowledge generated is through the action and the reflection. So how do you accommodate this very subjective way of gaining new knowledge and making a contribution?
Thank you, Melissa. And of course, the others can also weigh in on this. When I look at the work of Magdalene again, she decides to go and experiment with the firing. And she says that I'm going to time this 2 minutes and see results. These 3 minutes and see results. And then she documents. So when you are doing art or producing art as a research, then the documentation must be methodological. And that means that you have notes. What was your intent?
Okay.
Now, what was the result? And then you can decide whether that is good or bad. That is now the wicked problems of design and the subjective nature. Did you achieve what you intended? Somebody else?
You could say, because you said you have the action and reflection, and I support Lilac when she's saying the documentation. So it can be through that action and reflection and what you're finding out and what have you discovered and what you've explored and what do you think, that whole process of documenting, and then what was the result is that process that you would use. And it's very much what I'm saying, that Lilac has said more or less the same thing. So the documentation and recording the different stages and all the various things that you've put into it and the results that have come out of it become very critical. Yeah.
Okay, so as a follow-up to the studio-based research, is it similar or is it the same thing as practice-based research, or are they different things?
let me okay. Let me say that it depends on who you are, who is taking the research, whether you are the one who is doing it or whether you are observing somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
So you could be the designer who is actually doing and also researching, so you are writing, or it could be me looking at you and then writing about what you're doing.
Mm.
Okay, so which one becomes studio-based and which one becomes practice-based?
From my point of view, I would say the studio-based is more the doer actually reflecting on themselves and their action. Practice can include that, but it could also be the observer of watching somebody else doing.
Okay.
Yeah. So one is looking at the practice.
Yes, my question, please.
And one is looking at what they're doing, the exploration. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Wanyama, you next, your question?
Yes, my question is this, and Dr. Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. for your good presentation. I really appreciate it. I really gained a lot from what you presented. Though I have just one question that I want to get some clarification from you. You've talked about taking a position in the research as a designer. Do you mean that when I take a position in my research, I'm going to interfere with my results? Example, I'm testing some paintings, sample pigment. Then I bring my thoughts with my knowledge in that methodology. Do you think that I'm going to interfere with with my research if I first take a position? Dr. Thank you.
Yes, it will interfere because you have already taken a position and then you are going to prove. So it is not 100%, the validity of the results could be questioned by somebody else. But if you don't take a position, then also the research cannot give you what you want. So you take your position and then you prove within certain parameters, variables. Let somebody else come and question, or let you question when you repeat the experiment and you get a different result. So you must take a position which is subjective. Let me take you to a typical teacher to teach a design. So a poster is put up and you declare, wow, this student has done a good job. And then the next teacher comes and says, of course not, they have failed. Then you engage with the other teacher and say why, how, which, the parameters under which the subjectiveness is being questioned. You have to take a position. Patrick Mukabe's work is good. Whether my Chinese friends agree or not, it is good. But it might not appear on the wall of a Chinese because they might not agree with me.
Okay, thank you.
Professor Suki, anything to add on to that?
No,
thought?
I think she has provided what you need to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a question that's on the chat where somebody is asking, is a research paper limited to what has happened or can be based on possible outcomes if design was used on something?
The paper, unless it's a desktop study where it is dealing with secondary research and the outcomes that were done, it needs to be undertaken. The paper needs to come after the experiment has been done.
Okay.
You can undertake a desktop study, just look at all the documents on your table and make conclusions based on the documents. Then you write your paper based upon those documents that you have studied.
So, yeah, because that would be very much a literature review. So it depends at what level you are doing your research. Are you doing it at a bachelor's project level? Are you doing it at a master's level? Or are you doing it at PhD level? PhD, that would be literature review, and also in the master's would be literature review. But if you're just doing it as part of information that you want for a project, then that is fine. It gives you the background by which you're doing your project.
Let me add this. Some of the abstracts that I looked at least 2 or 3, were actually propositions. They were not literature. And as Professor Suki said, it could be literature review. Literature review can be presented as a paper for a journal. But a proposition cannot in itself be presented as a paper for in a journal.
Okay, Asante Daktari. Thank you, Prof. I hope that question has been answered. Dan, I can see you're still here. I hope you've gotten your answer. There is also another question that's also been asked. So somebody is asking whether do they concentrate on descriptive or prescriptive studies?
Depends.
For the NIDEC conference. So Pauline Mutura has asked, so for the purposes of the NIDEC conference, is the focus mainly on descriptive or prescriptive studies?
Let me say this for the benefit of those who have done the abstracts. I think you should focus on descriptive. Prescriptive requires a bit more in-depth research and maybe a little bit more critique. And from what I'm seeing, I think we are safer with descriptive. We are safer.
Okay. I can see Rosemary Awino's hand is up. I'm assuming she has a question. Hi, Rosemary. Please go ahead and ask your question. Rosemary? Rosemary, unmute your mic.
Yeah, Daktari, thank you so much for your insights. Thank you. I appreciate, especially that I'm doing descriptive. I've learned a lot. I just wanted to ask if one can make a critique or criticize, because there's no why in descriptive. So I was wondering how to go about that if now I'm doing my conclusions and maybe analysis. Am I able to criticize or critique rather? Or I just leave things the way they are, I just describe them the way they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosemary, nice to see you. You need to critique based upon the objectives that you set out to do. Did you meet those objectives? Every research has an objective and a research question. To what extent did you answer the research question? And if not, where do we go from here? Are you proposing more research? Are you proposing another angle? Are you proposing controlling certain variables? You need to critique after the findings based upon what the objective which you set out to meet, or the research question. Are we done?
I think we are.
Okay,
Yes.
so that takes me back.
No, sorry.
Somebody else has a question? Anyone else with a question?
Yes, my hand was up, so I thought I would be picked.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Esther. Sorry about that.
Oh, okay. So this is probably to the people who are currently doing their PhDs or have already done their PhDs, and also Dr. Lilac and Professor Suki. How do you go about reading in a way that I can call sustainable? You know, the way in such a way that you do not crash and burn and your brain decides not to take any more information, you know? So like for me, what I've noticed is when I'm reading, I have a cycle where for the first 3 days, my mind is very receptive, very fresh. But towards the 4th day, it starts getting very exhausting. And by the 5th day, I really do not want to read anymore. And there's a level of synthesizing of the information that I'm getting, yes. But I am looking at a process where, looking at a full week, 7 days, how is it that you can be able to read in such a way and write in such a way that it's sustainable, such that you can be doing it maybe for 7 days consecutively as opposed to maybe 3 days or something like that. I don't know if that makes sense.
I would say at what stage are you? I mean, it depends the stage, what stage of the PhD would one be at, because that would be slightly different. And I just say slightly different. Because if you're at the beginning stage and you're doing more of a literature review and you're reading through stuff and summarizing, well, that's what you'll be doing, reading, summarizing, but overall, I would say one thing, and this may sound funny, one thing you better do is exercise.
Okay.
Your brain needs to get out of where it has been, refreshed to go back in. So exercise is critical, if you ask me, because that helps to refreshen the brain. It brings oxygen into the body. It begins to enable because your brain needs oxygen. I mean, when you're reading, you're actually using a hell of a lot of oxygen, and you need to oxygenate your brain, if I'm going to be scientific about it. So do things that will actually help to oxygenate, especially when you're feeling you're burnt out. If that's overall, I'll say, you know, whatever stage. But I would say towards the end, which is the hardest, which is like when you're running and you're seeing the finishing line, besides passion, you really have to be very forgiving of yourself, because you do get blocks. And when you get a block, again, do something to distract your mind, to take it away from what you're doing, and then come back to it again. Because the more you stay in it, the more it will just conjure up and just become really frustrating. So that's what I can say from my experience and from what I've observed.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's very practical.
Esther, let me tell you this. I think at whatever stage you are in right now, you can't push it. Otherwise, you are doing zero work. So the 3 days or 4 days in which you are in, you maximize. The rest of the time, spend your time collecting, downloading literature, collecting literature. You can even write papers. I used to do a lot of A or B writing during my PhD. This is writing like for South Africa, or writing about, let me tell you the story that I told the Ugandans. They still laugh at me. I wrote about the rat that entered my house. And the rat came in, and the silly rat, instead of coming into my room, because I would have just slept with it, it went into my son's room. A stupid idea. It could have gone into the girls' room. The girls would have all moved out, but it went into the boys' room. And from 11 till 1 o'clock, there was no peace in the house. It was hunted. It was hunted. And not only hunted, it was beaten. And then it was thrown out of the window. The stupid rat. It should have come into my room. So what was it, 1.5 pages? I'm waiting for the illustrator, like Ken to come by so that we can illustrate it. Because you can imagine it being tossed round and then thrown out of the window. I wrote up 1.5 pages about it. So there are little things that complement your thinking and which will bring you back to your study. So you go out, you come in, you go out, you come in, you go out, you come in, until the final stages, which, as Professor Suki says, it is now, you don't have a choice. You just have to sit on it. But the nice thing is, towards the end, you're also seeing the finishing line. So you know, that finishing line, between you and that finishing line, it is only you. So you sit. I was sleeping at 3 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Wow, wow. Okay, thank you. So it's similar to a master's, only more intense.
Much more.
And to add on to this, Esther, you're not alone. I'm also in that same journey. And one thing that has really helped, as Professor Suki has said, is exercise. You actually get to feel very good about yourself and what you're doing once you've exercised your body physically. Dr. Lilac also always tells me, at least put in something every day. It doesn't matter whether it's one paragraph, one page, visual representation of maybe your concepts. Just make sure that, so that you don't feel that burnout 2-3 days I haven't done anything. But even though it's just one paragraph, just do it in that day and you'll see you'll move on slowly by slowly. Yes, and I can see another question which kind of is in the same direction. Someone is asking, how do you improve the concentration span? Because every time they start reading or writing, they end up with sketches that end up in a drawer. Who wants to take on to that answer?
I mean, whether we want to accept it or not, there's a certain level of discipline that you're going to have. And, or shall I say that you'll be developing. So part of the process will be learning to read and concentrate to be able to do what you need to do. Well, fine, your sketches, you may have your sketches, but your sketches may also have what Lilac was saying, something you can write about, which can contribute to what you need to do. But you're really developing as discipline, and it's something that one has to work at. That's the most I can really say.
Dr. Lilac, anything to add on?
No.
Okay. Anyone else with a question, thoughts, comments?
Can I say something? Not about that, something else. I didn't talk about case studies, although I saw 1 or 2 case studies which were put in the abstracts. And the case study, like any research, is also inquisitive and intentional. I want to write about design in Kenya. I need to be methodological so that somebody else, the methodology is so tight that somebody else can repeat or can relate to what I'm talking about. So even a case study must be intentional, and the methodology is the science of it.
Okay, Lilac and the rest of you, please, what I want to just say, because I need to go, okay. But I want to say, Lilac, thank you. Even me, I was learning. I was back in school. I needed to be reminded. So thank you. I think that was a wonderful presentation. I think you gave a lot of good knowledge and information to those listening. And I just want to say thank you. And I have to leave, I'm sorry, but all the best, all of you, and I'm sure we'll be meeting along the way. Thank you.
Asante, thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So yeah. I've talked about case study. Then the other question that I saw flipping through was on the posters. Even a poster has a purpose, and that purpose forms part of the abstract. The title of the poster and the intent must be expressed as part of the abstract. So the abstract might not be very long, but the poster is also a result of research. So I can do a poster on my kaloli. What am I trying to say is what goes into the abstract. The intent of the poster is expressed within the abstract. So the abstract must still be clear that the output is a poster which details this process or this thing that we are doing and the results of the same. Have we done with the questions?
I don't see any more questions on the chat unless somebody.
One question.
I can see Wanyama has a question. Go
There's
ahead.
One question about the review study. How do you approach the methodology? A review study. How do you approach the methodology? Thank you.
So if I'm going to review the trends in fashion, which is, I think fashion is on top of my head at the moment, then I'm going to say that I'm going to rely on literature from libraries, from the internet, secondary sources, from the media. That is my methodology. I'm getting information from there, but I'm guided by a research question. In this case, what has been happening or what is happening? It can even be a predictive study. I can look at what has happened in Europe and predict that what I will find in Kenya will make the fashion industry follow the path of success like in Europe. The research question, the research objective guides the methodology so that we can reach an answer to the question. You can also do case studies of specific designers. In this case, you are answering the question through case study method. Okay?
Thank you.
Can I summarize, therefore? So now,
Yes.
looking at Julia?
Yes, please go ahead.
Looking at what we have, please, basically we are asking you to pay attention to the information that you get. We had asked for these abstracts to come in within 300 or less words, I think. Some of the abstracts were running into 2 pages. We had asked that it comes in as a Word document. About 6 of them were in PDF. We had asked that it clearly states this. That is not happening. Just obey some rules. You know, every house has its own rules. So it's good to follow the rules. Re-examine your titles so that you realign your study, so that the variables are clear, and so that in outcomes, we can see where to plug it in terms of what are we expecting. Avoid very robust, big words that we cannot substantiate. Some of you have used words which you cannot even begin. Keep it small. Keep it small. You cannot afford to have more than 2 variables, independent variables, within your title or within your research, because there are too many things that will waste it in terms of reliability and validity. Some of them had questions, so I've said, instead of asking a question as a title, rework it so that it is a statement. Rework it so that it's a statement clearly showing the variables and what is expected. Again, bring yourself into the study so that we can see that you know about interior design and you're talking about furniture in small spaces. So when you translate that into a title, then it talks about arrangement of furniture within limited interiors in Nairobi. Very straightforward. So avoid these big words which we cannot answer within the time that we have. Avoid a case study of. So if it is a case study of Kibera or Line Saba in Kibera, absorb it into your title. Something about the titles. The title should be between 15 and 18 words only. It doesn't have to be, but you should aim for between 15 and 18 words. So please remove redundancies within your titles and within your abstracts. And that is all that I can, I'm giving a very general whatever, not specific, so you will allow me not to indulge too deeply. I'm hoping you're looking at your individual titles, your individual abstracts, so that they can be tightened. The abstract should have keywords, and those keywords should not be more than 5. 5 is too many, they should be 4. The keyword should be only 4. Can I say goodbye? Chair, I can see you there. Julia.
Let me first say thank you to Daktari and also to Prof, although she's already left. I think it was a very comprehensive presentation, and we are all going to work on what we need to work on. I hope we can be able to consult you further, Dr. Lilac.
I normally charge about 5,000 shillings per hour.
Okay, noted. I don't know whether to give it back to Chair. Chair Subira, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Julia.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Faiz, I see you've just checked in. We shall share the recording with you. We have recorded it. I hope this is useful for all of us as we go back to write again and resubmit. The only question I have for Daktari is, what are the timelines for submission and what do you expect at the next level?
I think according to our schedule, the papers were supposed to be due in July, but
yes.
I hope you have written to all of them, so they are writing.
Yes.
We
Yes.
We can agree on that. I don't have the document with me here.
So but the next phase is now people can move into writing their papers.
Yes, unless they want me to take them through methodology, which would be maybe another methodology, maybe that would be, let them write first.
Okay, so I sent everybody the comments on their abstracts, and in view of what you have learned, we shall share the video again so that you can watch it again and review and make notes. And then you can proceed and write your paper and then resubmit it to NIDEC at designkenyasociety.co.ke. We'll be giving you the actual timelines by email. I hope that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, that's fine.
Fantastic. So thank you for your time. Thank you for being active. And we look forward to receiving your papers.